I missed. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Are we here? Okay, okay. We're in here. Hey, we're in here. What's going on, guys? Can I get a round of applause? All right, quick sip of water. All right, all right. So we're going to get right into it. Man, I feel like I've been going a little heavy on the politics recently, but it's an election year. What do you want from me? There's a lot to talk about here. I've been going in a little heavy on the politics recently, but we're only what 3 months away. We're in August now. We're about 3 months away from the 2024 presidential elections. I mean, this is something that deserves our attention. It's pretty important. I got folks logging on here asking me whether or not they should vote at all. Should they vote for Kamala? Should they vote for Trump? Should they even vote at all? I got people asking me, my thoughts on this topic. And I think it's an important election year. I think we got a lot of stuff on the line right now, so it's necessary for us to have these discussions. Now, in case you haven't heard, in case you've been living under a rock, Kamala Harris has just recently chosen her VP pick. She has chosen her vice presidential pick, and she solidified her position as the Democratic nominee. So congratulations to her. Congratulations to Kamala Harris. Can we get a cheer? Now, the person she chose as her vice president, Tim Walz, people don't really know a lot about him. I myself included, prior to him being selected as the vice president, I hadn't heard too much about him. Apparently, he's the governor from Minnesota. Um, he's the governor from Minnesota. People right now are doing a lot of research on him, seeing his background, seeing his record as far as especially in this community, the delineation foundational Black American community. We've been figuring out what's his position as far as tangibles for Black folks, specifically for Black Americans. And what we've been finding is not good. It's not so good. So going out there in Minnesota, we know that see, in New York, Chicago, DC, these are considered sanctuary cities. These are cities that have been flooded by immigrants, some legal, some illegal. But the flooding of these migratory demographics have really diluted and affected the democratic or the demographics of these cities. New York is a democratic is a sanctuary city. Chicago is a sanctuary city. But Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, has created he has created a sanctuary state, not a sanctuary city, a sanctuary state. I mean, he's opening up the whole state for illegal immigrants, paving the way for them to get uh, licenses, allowing them, in some cases, they haven't put up any barriers to stop them from voting, which is big. We've talked about this in previous conversations, where here in D.C., illegal immigrants, even legal immigrants with a residency, non-citizens are welcome and legally allowed to vote in D.C. Well, Tim Walz, the vice presidential pick for Kamala Harris, has created a sanctuary state. All right. So just to give you some context, let's go ahead and get into some of the clips. Y'all know we always play clips and come with articles, give y'all something interesting to think about. So we're going to get into this clip. Y'all go ahead, as you come into the room, do me a favor and hit the thumbs up button. And be sure to subscribe if it's your first time watching. With that being said, let's get into this first clip.
Well, since he was announced as Vice President Kamala Harris's running mate yesterday, there's been an increased attention spent on Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and where he stands on key issues, including immigration. Walz has supported efforts to make Minnesota a sanctuary state. And as of 2022, about 9% of the state's population is made up of immigrants. Most of the immigrants who settle in the state come from Mexico, Somalia, and India, according to state data. Here with me to help break down Walz's record on immigration is CBS News correspondent Lilia Luciano. And I should say, recent immigrants, we are a nation of immigrants. But when we're talking about the term a sanctuary state, not everybody's as familiar with it, but it is a political football. Explain to us what Walz's position was, what he was doing in Minnesota.
As you say, Ilana, absolutely a political football. To explain what a sanctuary state, I'm going to use the opposite of what a sanctuary state is.
See, they keep pushing that term. We are a nation of immigrants. Listen. Most of us might be immigrants, but there's one unique and specific group of people that is not an immigrant. There is one unique and specific lineage of people who did not come here looking for better opportunities, looking for a better way of life. There's one unique, specific lineage in this country who did not abandon their homelands and hope to better themselves as individuals. There's only one group. I just want to make that clear, but I'll let her finish.
I'm thinking something like Texas. Say in Texas, for instance, Governor Greg Abbott, who's calling this ticket the most dangerous ever, he has implemented laws that empower local law enforcement, state law enforcement agencies to implement immigration laws. So a sanctuary state or a sanctuary city does the opposite. It prevents or it limits how much cooperation there is between local and state law enforcement and immigration agencies like ICE. So, for instance, if somebody is here in New York City, for instance, if somebody's arrested, NYPD and corrections do not call ICE and say, hey, we're about to release somebody either on bail or for whatever reason. They don't cooperate. There are laws in New York that prevent that from happening. So there is a limit.
Now, hold on. I got to pause it here. What sense, just on a logical level, does it make to limit the cooperation between local law enforcement and ICE, federal law enforcement? If you on local level have arrested someone that you suspect is in this country illegally, what sense does it make not to pick up the phone and say, hey, could we confirm this person? They might be here illegally. We just want to confirm. Why would you want to stop that phone call from being made? Can someone, if you've got an answer to that question, leave it in the comments section. She's going to try to gloss over this question, gloss over this issue, but just think about it on a logical level. If the local police, let's say the local police have caught someone drinking and driving, let's say they've caught someone stalking in a domestic violence situation, let's say they caught someone, messing with kids. What sense does it make to prevent the police officers from calling just a phone call? I'm not saying, I'm saying just make a phone call. Why would you want to prevent the police officer on the local level from calling federal authorities and saying, hey, do we have any tracker? Are we tracking this person? Are we looking? Is there a warrant out on this person? Why would you want to limit the communication between local law enforcement and federal law enforcement? That's a genuine question. Leave your comments, leave the answer to that question in the comments section if you think you have a good one.
Limit on how much local law enforcement can cooperate with federal law enforcement agencies, which are the ones that actually have the jurisdiction to implement law.
Why would states want to do that? Because one of the things that Walz did was also sign a driver's license for all bill.
Yeah.
So explain some of the rationale about why these states decide that it's a better option to become a sanctuary city, to provide driver's licenses, regardless of one's immigration status.
So let's divide those two issues. One is the idea of a sanctuary state. What he has said in the past is that, look, cities and states are safer when you don't have local law enforcement implementing or stepping out of their jurisdiction as Congress has granted them and applying or implementing federal immigration law. Basically,
does this make sense to you so far? Does it sound as if it would be safer Does it sound as if it would be safer to handcuff the local law enforcement? Is it safer to stop the police officers from calling federal authorities if they suspect someone is in the country illegally? In what way would that make the community safer? If you've already arrested someone for committing a crime, in what world does it make the community safer by preventing the police from getting more information from federal authorities? But see how they just say this stuff and they just say it quickly as if nobody's going to listen or if no one's going to process what they're actually saying?
Implementing or stepping out of their jurisdiction as Congress has granted them and applying or implementing federal immigration law. Basically, immigration law is up to federal agencies. Local law enforcement is up to local law enforcement agencies. What he says is, look, if you have a fear from undocumented immigrants to call police, to cooperate with law enforcement, to say, hey, there's a crime because they fear that they're going to end up getting deported, you're going to have a less safe city. Now, on the issue of licenses, that's another law that he supported and passed in Minnesota, which allows for undocumented people to have licenses. Why does he support this? Well, he says, A, it's safer for everyone because that way everybody who is driving is going to have to get tested, is going to have to pass a test and be vetted and go through the process that everybody else has to go through.
Minnesota's driver license for all law. 1, don't need to prove legal residence in the U.S. So you don't even have to prove legal residency in the U.S. If you go to Minnesota, what you could do is you come to America as a tourist. You come here as a tourist and you can go get yourself a driver's license and start driving. You could be coming from a country where they don't even drive on the right side of the road. I mean, realistically speaking, you could be coming from a country where you don't even drive on the right side of the road. You come here on a tourist visa, and in Minnesota, you don't need to prove legal residence in the U.S., and you can still go get a driver's license. Applies to Class D driver's license, instruction permits, and standard ID cards. Allegedly can't be used to vote or register for real ID. That's the last one they snuck in there without any real scrutiny. It can't be used to vote. What's stopping you? If you have a valid license, what's stopping you from voting?
It's safer for people because everyone on the road is expected to have, a license. People, what he says is, regardless of their immigration status, need to use cars to get to work. So if you're limiting undocumented immigrants from getting a license to going to work, to taking their kids to school, doing all of those things, then on the one hand, you can't vet them. On the other hand, it impacts the economy because then these people are not going to be going to work. So he's saying, look, it's happening anyway. Give people licenses, allow them to contribute to the economy. And also, by the way, there's going to be more people paying for car insurance because you need to have a license to, of course, drive. You need to go through all those tests. And undocumented immigrants then will also be insured. And of course, there are other social reasons. He says, look, if you have a license, you're going to take your kids to school, to soccer practice. You're going to be more involved in your kids' lives.
Well, real quick, Lilia, because we heard you say that Governor Abbott said that this is dangerous. We heard Senator Vance say that this is really liberal. Yeah. But Walz is from a moderate state. Are these positions liberal? Are they moderate? Where do they actually land? What's the truth?
The way that he explains them is they are practical. They are good for safety. They are good for the economy. The other side, I mean, people who oppose these laws say, especially with the driver license ones, is that allows for voter fraud to happen. But there are ways to limit that. There are ways to remove the possibility of just needing to show a license to get to vote. But I know we don't have the whole day to go into that. But this is where he says it's practical, it's good for the economy, and it's good for safety. Not everyone agrees.
Lilia Luciano, thank you so much, friend.
Thank you, Lana.
This is what he says. He says it's practical. The question was, is this liberal or is this moderate? And instead of answering the question, oh yeah, well, J.D. Vance and Governor Greg Abbott are saying that this is extremely liberal, as it is. As it is. Kamala Harris and now her vice president, Tim Walz, are both extreme on the issue of immigration. Now, I'm just thinking about it. Hey, I've got friends who are coming to America as immigrants and foreign nationals. I'm going to tell them, hey, if you want to get your driver's license, just go to Minnesota, get your driver's license, and then come back to DC. I mean, why not? What's stopping you? You want to drive? You can't get a driver's license in Maryland. You can't get your driver's license in Georgia. You can't get your driver's license in Virginia. Just take a flight to Minnesota. You can go get the learner's permit, fly back to Virginia. 6 months later, go back to Minnesota again and get your driver's license. You're good to go. You can get your driver's license in Minnesota. You don't even have to have residency. Huh? That doesn't sound a little extreme to you? And DC, if you're a DC resident, you can vote in DC and get your driver's license in Minnesota, and there's nothing stopping you from driving or voting. As a foreign national, non-US citizen, you live in DC, you can vote in DC, and you can go get your driver's license in Minnesota, come back to DC, drive around. If the police try to stop you, hey, I got my license. You want to vote? You can come to DC, you can vote, no problem. And now you're trying to take these policies of encouraging illegal immigrants to come to a sanctuary state like Minnesota, because Tim Walz was the governor of Minnesota, implementing these sanctuary. He made the whole state, not a sanctuary city, a sanctuary state. He's going to take those same policies and implement them nationwide. That's their vision for the future. That's their vision for the future. Now, one thing, I don't like everything about Trump and the Republicans. There's some things that he's doing, that he's some of his policies that I like, and there's some of his policies that I don't like. If you've been watching this channel, you know that I'm fair to both the Republicans and the Democrats. On the Democratic side, there's some policies that I think that the Democrats are better than the Republicans on, such as abortion, even though I, in my personal life, am pro-life. Politically, I believe in the separation of church and state. I believe women are going to do what they want to do, so they should have their right to do whatever they want to do with medical help, instead of getting pregnant and going on a roller coaster ride because they don't want to have the baby. Instead of getting pregnant and punching themselves in the stomach a bunch of times, just let them safely take care of the situation that they were unaccountable for and that they found themselves in. Let them go handle that. Leave that up to them. I don't like the government. I'm a little bit more libertarian in that regard. I don't want the government telling people what they should do with their bodies. I think that should be on you as the individual. So there are some policies that the Democrats support that the Republicans don't, but there are very few policies that the Republicans, especially under Donald Trump's Agenda 47, there are very few policies that the Republicans and Donald Trump are espousing that I think are a danger or a threat to foundational Black Americans. Whether I like them or not as an individual, I don't really feel threatened by the policies that Donald Trump is espousing. Whereas Kamala and the Democrats, their stance on immigration, because like I said, with the Roe v. Wade, codifying Roe v. Wade, I'm a man. So that doesn't necessarily affect me. That affects women, and that's not specific to foundational Black Americans. But to foundational Black Americans, looking at the Democratic agenda, I think their open border policies, their sanctuary state policies, that is a genuine threat and concern to foundational Black Americans. That really does affect us because we are already a minority in this country. And the Democrats giving these illegal immigrants the right to vote, first and foremost, that is a real threat to our ability to have any say in this country. Our voting rights are being diluted, and we are unable to compete because as foundational Black Americans, we can't just call out to people from our cousins and aunties in a different country and say, hey, they've got open borders, come to America. Foundational Black Americans, we don't have another country to call for resources from. See, the Hispanic community that's living in America, they have the people that reproduce, Meaning, if you're Mexican, you've got a Mexican household, and you have a kid, you just expanded the Mexican population by 1. Black Americans are the same. If we have a Black American household and we have a kid, we just expanded the Black American household by 1. Whereas the Mexicans can say, yes, we expanded our household by 1, but we're also going to call our aunties from Mexico to come to America and expand our demographics by immigration. Foundational Black Americans can't do that. We are a unique and specific group. We don't have another country that we can call for more immigrants, more reinforcers from. We can't. We just don't have that option. We don't have any other country. Every immigrant that comes here has the resources that they have here, the population that they have here, plus they have a country backing them, their home country, their native country. So the foundational Black Americans, we don't have that opportunity. We don't have the ability to get reinforcements because all we have is the demographics that we produce through sex, through reproducing, having kids. That's the only way we can expand our numbers. Whereas other groups are able to come in through immigration and reproduce and reproduction. So we see our numbers in the form of percentage of the population decreasing. We see our numbers decreasing. We are unable to compete. And when you give these illegal immigrants the right to vote, our voting power is decreased. The only reason this is really our last opportunity as a voting bloc to right now, we've got this delineation movement that we're pushing. We're pushing and asking for tangibles. We're pushing and asking for reparations. And the question that people are facing now is, who do we think would be more likely, more open to hearing our arguments, to hearing our pleas, to hearing our demands as it goes as far as reparations and tangibles for foundational Black Americans? When I look at Kamala Harris, who said, I'm not doing anything only for Black Americans. No. When we look at Kamala Harris and we look at Tim Walz, who are saying, hey, not only are we not going to give anything specific to foundational Black Americans, we're going to do the opposite. We're going to dilute your numbers and weaken your voting power by bringing in other groups to replace you. You ever heard of the replacement theory? We're going to bring in other groups from other countries to replace you. As soon as they get here, within 30 days, they'll have the right to vote in DC. You're a DC resident like me. Someone can come from another country and within 30 days, they got the right to vote and cancel out my vote. My vote has just been diluted. Whereas the Republicans, when we look at Trump, what's Trump saying? Trump and the Republicans are saying, make America great again. Wait, America first? So we as foundational Black Americans, we are Americans first. We are the only American-only group. See, there's no other group outside of foundational Black Americans that can claim that, even the white Americans. See, white Americans, they can say, hey, my family immigrated here and through Coney Island, through Ellis Island in the 1930s. My family came here from Great Britain in the 19th century. My family came here from Germany in the 18th century. Fine. Not only a few things. One, not only do you know the country that you came from, a lot of the folks, the Africans that came here in chains, because foundational Black Americans like my lineage have been here since the foundation. I myself have family members, ancestors who died in the Revolutionary War. So we've been here literally since the United States became a country. 1776, I've got family members, I've got ancestors who died in that war, who have been here since the United States was even a country. There are a lot of countries in Africa, Nigeria, Mozambique. There's a lot of countries in Africa that were not even around in the 1700s. So the countries where we were imported from, like if I've done my mom has done her 23andMe, She says that we have some lineage going back to what they call it Nigeria. But at the time that our ancestors were brought to America, well, they weren't brought to America because there was no America when we got here. When our ancestors came to the colonies, to the wilderness of North America, when they came to the wilderness, there was no Nigeria. See, the white people, even the white people, they can say, oh, I came from Great Britain. My ancestors came from Great Britain. Do you understand America had a war against Great Britain? Oh, my family came from Germany. I'm German. Do you understand the Germans have fought against the Americans? Oh, my family came from France. You know, I'm French. The French went to war with America. What about Spain? The Spanish fought against America. What about Mexico? The Mexicans fought against America. Foundational Black Americans are the only group. We haven't had a war against America. We've been here since the country was founded. Since really before that, since before the country was founded. We were here since there was nothing but wilderness, nothing but bushes and trees. There was no railroads, there was no roads, there was no country. We were here before all of that. We were here before all of that. So we are the only group who can claim to have never fought against who have never turned our backs against the country. We are a very specific, unique group. And we are unable to reproduce ourselves through immigration. We are the only group here, I guess we and the Native Americans, even though foundational Black Americans do have Native American heritage. That's a whole nother story for a whole nother life. But we and the Native Americans are the only ones who are unable to import ourselves from another country because we have been here. We've been here since the foundation. We don't have a home country to get reinforcements from. All right? Whereas, again, the Republicans, Donald Trump and them, they're saying we should put America first. That's good for us. If you're talking, the Republicans, Donald Trump is talking about limiting immigration, that's good for foundational Black Americans. That's good for our voting bloc. That's good for our reparations claim. That's good for our delineation claim. Whereas Kamala Harris, her policies are directly undermining the whole delineation movement. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are directly undermining and diluting the foundational Black American voting bloc. And I came across this clip recently, and I want to play this. This is, and I'm going to substantiate that claim that the immigration, the open border policies of the Democrats and Kamala Harris is undermining foundational Black Americans. We're going to read an article, and I'm going to defend that point. Excuse me, but first I want to play this clip. This clip was Kamala Harris speaking at the Freedmen's Bank Forum. Now, to give you some background information, the Freedmen Bank was specifically created in order to help the descendants of slaves, not the descendants of slaves, freed slaves. That's why they called them freed men. It was to help and allow foundational Black Americans, the freed slaves, to accumulate wealth and pool our resources in order to buy land, in order to buy property, in order to open businesses, in order to, quote unquote, pull ourselves up by the bootstrap. We had the Freedmen's Bank. Of course, the white establishment didn't like seeing us thrive. They didn't like the Reconstruction movement in the 1800s, which is why the Reconstruction was replaced with Jim Crow. But during Reconstruction, Black Americans started to thrive. Black Americans had conservative values, so we were spending less than we were saving. We were saving more and spending less. We were spending within our own communities, so our dollar circulated much more than it does now. And when the white establishment saw that we were beginning to thrive, of course, they targeted the Freedmen Bank and essentially stole all of the funds from the Freedmen's Bank. Kamala Harris, knowing this history, and I'm going to play this clip, but she, speaking to the Freedmen's Bank Forum, acknowledged the history of the freedmen, the legacy which affected us foundational Black Americans through the theft of wealth of our ancestors, the freed slaves. And she takes that history and decides to dilute it. She decides that because foundational Black Americans and our ancestors had their wealth stolen, it's necessary to repair that harm by granting wealth to everybody, immigrants included. Let me play this clip.
So I will begin with some history, which I think is familiar with many people in this room, but there are many who are not familiar with the history of Freedmen's Bank. So Freedmen's Savings Bank was founded by the United States Congress in 1865. It was a bank unlike any other our nation had known. Freedmen's Bank was established to serve Black Americans newly freed from slavery, to help them build wealth and to build a better future. At Freedmen's, to open a savings account, you just needed 5 cents, which, as I've calculated, is about $1 today. In the years after its founding, tens of thousands of Black families opened an account at Freedmen's. They saved up to buy a farm, to build a home, to open a business. Even school children saved their pocket money to deposit it in this institution. And then 9 years later, after the bank first opened its doors, because of an economic downturn and because of the organized assault on the project of Reconstruction, Freedmen's Bank was forced to close. Over 60,000 people lost their savings. Now, Freedmen's Bank was guided by a vision. The vision.
Now, notice how she's going into detail about what the Freedmen's lost. 60,000 people lost their funds. There was during Reconstruction, we had all of our money lost. She's telling the history of a specific and unique lineage. She's telling the problems that we faced, right? Now listen how she parlays this. See, because I want you to notice when you're listening to this, whenever the Democrats talk about specific harms to the Black community, they talk about the harms that we, foundational Black Americans, have faced. But whenever they talk about the ways that they're going to repair the harms, whenever they talk about the way that they're going to restore the community that suffered these injustices, for some reason, it doesn't become as specific as the way the harms were. But you can rattle off the way the community was harmed, and you're very specific to us. But when it comes to the repair for the harm, all of a sudden, it has to include everybody else. We have to dilute. We have to dilute the repair and disperse the repair to everyone. Whereas the harm is specific to us, the repair is specific to everyone. It's really interesting the way that happens. So check out how she parlays this. Check out how she parlays this, this harm that foundational Black American freedmen suffered, and how that was necessary for everyone to benefit.
People lost their savings. Now, Freedmen's Bank was guided by a vision. The vision of an economy that works for all Americans and includes all Americans. The vision of a nation in which all people have access.
No, the Freedmen's Bank was not about including all Americans. The Freedmen's Bank was about specific lineage, a specific people, the freedmen. If the Freedmen's Bank was about including all Americans, then why wasn't it the freedmen and freed Hispanics? There were Hispanics in the country at that time. Why wasn't it the freedmen and freed Asians? There were Asians in the country at that time. The freedman was specific to the freed slaves, our specific lineage. So why is it that she's starting to parlay, oh, the Freedmen's Bank was about including everyone in the economy? No, it wasn't. You're a liar.
Access to the financial resources they need to succeed, to thrive, and to determine their own future. Truly at the heart of that bank was the concept of self-determination. Over a century and a half later, in communities across our nation, that vision remains unrealized. Consider, today, Black entrepreneurs are 3 times more likely to report that they did not apply for a loan for fear of being turned away by a bank, often anecdotally because they heard about that experience from friends and relatives. Today, Black and Latino homeowners are rejected by traditional financial institutions at a higher rate when applying for home loans. And this is the case even when they have credit profiles similar to other applicants. Today, many immigrant business owners, including some Asian American business owners, face language barriers that limit their ability to access capital and banking services. And people who live in rural areas, including many Native Americans, often lack access to traditional financial services of any kind. So President Biden and I know that for our nation to succeed, these disparities must be spoken of, acknowledged, and addressed. One of the last actions, as you heard Secretary Yellen mentioned, I took as a United States Senator was to team up with Leader Chuck Schumer and Senator Mark Warner and Senator Cory Booker and Chairwoman, Maxine Waters, to invest $12 billion in community lenders, which of course are financial institutions that predominantly do business in overlooked and underserved communities. Last month, I was proud to announce that because of that hard work and the work of many of the leaders in this room,
See, again, now she's talking about how she's funding banks in overlooked and underserved communities. See, again, when they're talking about the harms that we face, she's very specific. But whenever they're talking about what they're going to do to rectify the harms that we specifically faced, all of a sudden, it's very inclusive. The harm is exclusive, but the remedy is very inclusive. And this is why the delineation movement is so important. This is why it's so important. And I gotta be honest with you. The Republicans with their America First agenda has more of a camaraderie. There's more alignment with America and their America First agenda than there is with this open borders, let's include all peoples and forget about the pains that you Black Americans have suffered. We're going to remedy the harms for everyone. Listen, we can't solve the world's problems. We just can't do it, especially not right now. They're telling us that we don't have the money for reparations, but we have money to solve we have money for wars, first of all, but we've got money to solve everyone else's problems, illegal immigrants' problems. No, we just don't have it.
Administration has distributed more than $8 billion of that investment to 162 community lenders across our nation. That is $8 billion on the ground in communities across our nation right now. And I'll share with you some of the examples. In North Dakota, Native American Bank lent $10 million to help fund an opioid addiction treatment facility on tribal lands. In Georgia, Carver Bank lent over $500,000 to help Black-owned companies
on tribal lands. Now, how does that help us? Think about what she's saying as far as the solution that she's found. See, at the beginning of this speech, she talks about how 60,000 slaves, freed slaves, lost their money, had their money stolen with the closing and the targeting of the Freedman's Bank, the Freedman's Bank. Her solution that everyone is applauding is, well, we just gave money and they opened up a crisis center on the Native American reservations. Are Black Americans allowed on the Native American reservations? No. So why is it that you're talking about what you're doing for the Native Americans? They're not the ones that had their Freedman's Bank stolen and robbed and foreclosed. It really upsets me. It really irks me when I hear them exclusively talk about the pain that we've suffered. But when it comes to the remedy, it's all inclusive. It's all inclusive. And not only is it all inclusive, it excludes us. You just said that she opened with telling us about all the pains and all the suffering that the freedmen's face, the foundational Black Americans face. But then when it comes to the solution, to the thing that she's doing to solve the problem, to counteract the problem, she says that she helped another group, being the Native Americans, and she helped them in such a way that Black Americans can't even benefit. We don't even have access to those crisis centers. This is why the delineation movement is crucial right now. And the younger generation is waking up. And I'm going, like I said, we're going to break into some articles in a minute, but I'm going to show you that these demographics, the changes in demographics are very important. Right now, we've got the ear of the youth. The younger generation is hearing us, but these demographic changes and this exclusive pain but inclusive remedy, these types of policies are counterproductive. These type of policies are diluting the claim that the foundational Black Americans have.
And in Mississippi, Hope Credit Union, led of course by the great Bill Bynum, lent $10,000 to a Black-owned and woman-owned coffee company to help them expand. And that's just one example of the incredible work that they do there. Since taking office, then I will tell you I have traveled our nation and spoken with small business owners who have received funds from community.
So her examples of what she's done to address the pain of the freedmen is she opened up the freedmen, the freed slaves, getting 60,000 people having their money stolen. This is how she opened it. But her remedy to that was, well, we gave money to the Native American reservations so that the Native Americans could open a crisis center on their reservations. Can Black Americans benefit from that? No. And we also gave money to the Mississippi banks so that they could open a coffee shop. What? The Native Americans get a crisis center. We can't benefit from it. Mississippi, what do we get? Okay, that's something that could actually benefit us. Did we get a crisis center? No. Did we get a hospital? No. Did we get reparations? No. Did we get a new bank for housing or land? No. What did we get? We got money for a coffee shop. We got money for a coffee shop. Really? They're laughing at us. They're laughing at us.
Community lenders. And I have seen what it means in terms of acknowledging, recognizing, and then feeding their ambition and aspiration and creativity, both in terms of their own aptitude and capacity, but also because they are in the best position to understand the needs and the capacity of their communities. And I've seen how they use that capital to hire people from the community, to open a new storefront on the main street, how they buy inventory from local businesses. The whole community benefits in one way or another, economically, not to mention psychically, from their presence. And at the same time,
in one way or another,
I have also seen how the great need for capital still remains in our country, meaning how much more work we still have yet to do. You know, I hope and know that everyone here does get the opportunity to travel our country. And from my travels, I will share with you. There are so many people in our country that have incredible dreams, fueled by their ambition, fueled by their aspiration, fueled by seeing what is possible, and then going for it. But far too many still lack the resources and the support to make those dreams a reality. And what ends up happening then is these entrepreneurs cannot access capital to start a business. We're talking about families who then cannot access the capital they need to buy a home, students who cannot access capital to get an education because they live in an underserved community, and because often they also do not have the benefit of intergenerational wealth. We need to address this because, again, there is a complete disconnect between their inability to grow and the fact that they are so talented and desirous of doing just that. So let's deal with that disconnect, which we also refer to as disparities, because we see that people in our country are having an experience that is not equal. And that's why we talk about equity, because we recognize not everybody starts out on the same base. They don't start out in the same place, even though they have the same God-given capacity. So when we talk about the work we are doing here together, it is recognizing that and being guided by this principle of what we must do in the spirit and in the interest of equity. And to do this, one of the aspects of the success we have seen so far is the benefit and the incredible power of public-private partnership. The public and the private sector joining together. And what we have been doing and must do more is to combine the expertise and the experience of the private.
I don't want to hear the rest of this foolishness. Listen, here's the problem. Here's the problem with what she's saying here. And y'all are welcome to go back and listen to her speech. But here's the problem that America, people who are actually from America, should think about, especially foundational Black Americans, especially white Americans. Really, my message to white Americans is this is costing y'all a lot more money than just being just to the Black Americans. See, this whole idea that we've got to give equity, not equality, we've got to give equity to everybody, to people who just got here off the boat a month ago. This is all a distraction. Instead of just giving the reparations and giving justice to the foundational Black Americans who have a just claim, they're trying to put all these other groups ahead of Black Americans as buffer classes, right? They're trying to uplift the LGBTQ community. Hey, we've got to be just to the LGBT. You know, the gays, they've been discriminated against, and the Hispanics, they've been discriminated against, and the immigrants, they've been discriminated against. They're trying to put all these different buffer groups above the foundational Black Americans and try to give everyone equity, trying to make everyone equal. Instead of just saying, hey, we're going to give the money that is owed to the foundational Black Americans, we're going to give them their justice. We're going to give them reparations. And after that, forget the equity. After that, if you come to this country, you should be grateful. It's your job to compete. Otherwise, you don't like it, go back to your own country. It's so much more expensive for the country and for really white supremacy. It's so much more expensive trying to elevate all these other groups as buffer classes instead of just giving us justice. Because that's really what it is. They don't want to give foundational Black Americans, they don't want to give, especially the Democrats. Let me tell you the situation as I see it. Here's the situation. Truthfully, here's the situation. The Democrats, the foundation of the Democrats is the Black American community, the African, what they call African Americans, Black Americans, foundational Black Americans are the foundation of the Democratic Party today. Not always, because there was a time where Black Americans were Republican. We had the Southern Strategy. We had the Great Shift. And now, as of 2024, for the past 50 to 60 years at least, Black Americans have been the foundation of the Democratic Party. But now, the Democrats see that the Black Americans, foundational Black Americans, are starting to step away from the Democrats. We're starting to look at the Democrats and say, well, what have you done for us lately? What have you done for us lately? Why are we giving you our vote and you all haven't given us any policies, any tangibles since the 1960s? Why are we voting for you? So Black Americans are starting to look and consider third parties, starting to consider the Republican Party. We're starting to consider our alternatives. The Democrats, instead of saying, well, we haven't given any tangibles to our base, we haven't given any tangibles to the Black Americans who have supported us for the past 50 years, voting as a block at 90+% in every election. They've given us our votes. What other voting block can you name that has been with a single party, one party, at the tune of 90+% for 50+ years? We are the most loyal voting block in the country, and we've been giving our vote away for nothing. And when we go to the Democrats and say, hey, we're going to need some tangibles, we're going to need a crime bill, we're going to need an anti-immunity bill to stop these police officers from killing us with impunity. We're going to need some reparations, some economic stimulus that's targeting our group, our community specifically. But we're coming to the Democrats with these demands. Instead of addressing our concerns, instead of saying, you know what, you're right, we haven't done anything for you in 60 years. Affirmative action has just been overturned. And even before affirmative action was overturned, it was being utilized and diluted by all these other groups, by immigrants and handicapped people and white women and gay LGBTQ community. Affirmative action was being diluted. We haven't done anything for Black Americans in 60 years. Let's give the Black Americans something. Instead of the Democrats offering tangibles for the Black American vote, they're saying, uh-oh, the Black Americans aren't going to vote for us if we don't do anything. They're waking up. What should we do? Hey, I've got an idea. Let's give citizenship and voting rights to illegal immigrants. Then we can replace the votes that we lose. The Black Americans won't vote for us anymore. No problem. We'll give voting rights to the illegal immigrants and we'll get their votes instead. They're trying to replace our votes. They're trying to dilute our votes. That's the issue. But it's costing the country an arm and a leg. We see cities like New York, cities like Chicago, spending tens of millions of dollars a month, not a year, a month, trying to house these illegal immigrants. Instead of just closing the border and giving Black Americans justice, giving Black Americans the things that they are owed in an effort to dilute our vote, they're supporting all of these other groups. Not only are they supporting the illegal immigrants instead of us trying to give them voting rights, they're trying to limit our population growth. They're trying to limit our population growth by pushing eugenics programs such as Planned Parenthood. They're trying to limit our population growth by pushing mental insanity such as the transformer agenda, right? They're trying to push these rainbow agendas onto our community in order to limit our population growth. They call it population control. They call it depopulation. But that's backfiring. That's leading a lot of their own people in the white community to join the transformer community. So every time, whatever the suspected white supremacists do to undermine us as a group, they try to push these population control measures like Planned Parenthood, but then the largest group of people committing child deletions would be the white woman. You wanted us, black people, to use it, but then instead of black people using it, white women are using it. So that's why the Republicans are saying, oh, we've got to stop that now. They tried to push the LGBTQ, FUCK agenda onto our community, but no, it ends up affecting their own community at much higher rates. Whatever they try to do to keep us down, they try to dilute our vote by making sanctuary states like Minnesota and Tim Walz. But then no, it ends up not only diluting their demographics to where white people will become a minority group in the next 15 years or less. See, everything, what's the word say? It all works for good. All works for the good of those who serve the Lord. Guys, people, man, we're going to be all right. We are going to be all right. And every weapon that the enemy tries to throw against us, it always backfires. It always backfires. Now, let me show you something. This is why I'm saying that these demographic measures are so important. And this is a major election coming up. And the difference in how the Republicans versus how the Democrats plan on handling illegal immigration is crucial. This is really a vital election for the reason of demographic changes. And we're going to get into this article. This is coming from the Pew Research. This is coming from Pew Research Center. All right. And the headline reads, Black and white Americans are far apart in their views of reparation for slavery. Now, y'all know on this channel, we're big advocates for reparations. We're big advocates for the delineation movement. So it's important that we read articles like this as they come out. All right. This was written November 28th, 2022. So fairly recent, within the past 5 years. So this is a fairly recent article. And it has interesting implications on for this upcoming election. All right. Black and white Americans are far apart in their views for reparations of slavery. Discussions about atonement. Let me make sure that y'all can read it. Okay. Discussions about atonement for the enslavement of Black Americans have a long history in the U.S., and efforts toward reparations for slavery and racial discrimination have moved forward in some places in recent years. In 2021, Evanston, Illinois became the first U.S. city to create a reparations plan for its Black residents. And California that year set up the nation's first state-level reparations task force. So you can see that the reparations movement is gaining steam. This is not just something that crazy people are talking about online. This is having real impact at least on a local level. And as the momentum grows, it will be implemented nationwide. Earlier this year, Harvard University created a $100 million Legacy of Slavery Fund to allow scholars and students to examine the unity's connections to slavery. Now, why are they giving $100 million to allow students to study the university's connection to slavery? I think that money would be much better spent paying for foundational Black Americans, people who descended from the slaves, to go to Harvard, allow students to go to Harvard and take that $100 million and put it into scholarship program. I think that's money much better spent, but I digress. First of all, can we just take a second to applaud and recognize the achievement and momentum gained in Evanston, Illinois, the achievements and momentum gained in California, the achievements and momentum gained through to Harvard University putting up $100 million. We a lot of times we gloss over this stuff, but these are big gains that weren't here 5 years ago. The momentum is building and we're seeing tangible results. Can I get a round of applause? All right, let's keep going in this article. Americans view the prospect of reparations most negatively. A 2021 Pew Research survey found 3 in 10, that's 30%, of U.S. adults say descendants of slave people enslaved in the U.S. should be repaid in some way, such as given land or money. About 7 in 10, almost 70%, say descendants should not be repaid. So the majority of the country, about 70%, are like, get those naggers. Those naggers, we're not giving those naggers nothing. Huh? We're not giving, forget those naggers. Yeah, we stole their money and we're going to keep it. We stole their money and we're going to keep it in our community. Forget them. They don't deserve anything. Take this, nagger. This is your reparations, nagger. Right? Let them tell it. What? Yeah. That's how they feel about us. But we got 30%. We got 30% rocking with us. All right, now I like this. Now let's check out this breakdown because this is why I say the demographics is so important. All right, how we did this: 77% of Black Americans, compared with 18% of white Americans, support reparations for descendants of enslaved people. Views of reparations for slavery vary widely by race and ethnicity, especially between Black and white Americans. Around 3/4 of Black Americans, 77%, say the descendants of people enslaved in the U.S. should be repaid in some way, while 18% of the white Americans say the same. Now check this out. Here's the percentages. All U.S. adults, 68 to 30, right? White, 80% are saying, forget those naggers. 20% are saying, yeah, our ancestors did wrong. They've been suffered and they do deserve justice. So can we get a round of applause for the 20% of good white folks out there? Black Americans, of course, Black Americans are for it because we are the just and moral voice of the country. Truthfully, the Black Americans are the moral compass of America. We stood against Vietnam. We stood against a lot of these illegal wars of aggression that's going on today. We fought bravely against Hitler in World War II. We are the moral compass of this country. We've always stood on business, and we have always fought. We fought against Italy on behalf of the Ethiopians. When Ethiopia was being invaded, we signed up against the will of our own government to go over there and teach the Ethiopians how to fly planes so that they could defend themselves against Italy. We made music in order to bring global attention to the apartheid state in South Africa. We made music, shout out to Gil Scott-Heron for making music, bringing attention to the racism, the blatant racism and discrimination that was taking place in Rhodesia, which is now called Zimbabwe. Let me get a round of applause for the foundational Black Americans who are and were the moral compass of America, historically speaking. So, of course, we at a tune of 77% are supporting reparations. Now, I would have to say shame and fire bun the 17% of Black people saying that reparations are not deserved. What? Now, my question is this 17% of black people, this is why the delineation movement is so important. I'm betting that those 17% of black Americans, those are folks like Kamala Harris. Those are folks like that just got off a boat coming from somewhere, coming from India. Those are folks like Myron from Fashion Fit. Those are folks coming from Sudan, coming from Somalia, coming from Pakistan, coming from India. They call themselves black when it's convenient. But yeah, they're not like us. That 17%, they not like us. So the Hispanics, we see 58% are saying no. This is why I say immigration is so important, because these are the groups that are starting to dilute us. See, if it was just the 80% of white folks and 77% of black folks, these are the numbers that we would have to work on, right? But when we see these other groups come into the equation, that's when we have the white people. They're coming to reinforce the white no votes. They're not coming in to reinforce the black yes vote. So that's why it's important here. Hispanics, 58% say no, but 39% say yes. So shout out to the rioters in the Hispanic group. Shout out to them. The Asians are strong against it. The Asians, man, the Asians are the wannabe white folks. Man, let me tell you, I lived out in China. I've been to a lot of Asian countries. I've been to South Korea. I know that a lot of those Asians identify as white. A lot of those Asians, they want to be white. They're want to be white. A lot of them are. So 65% of the Asian group are saying no to reparations, whereas 33% say yes. Shout out to the Asians that are riding with us. The 33%, shout out to them. All right, so we got to break down. We're going to get a little bit more detail as far as the immigration, how immigration affects our reparations claim. But first, I want to draw attention to the youth. All right, now this is important. When we look at the no side, most of the no's are coming from the older generation, 65 and older. That means people who were alive before the assassination of Martin Luther King. Keep in mind, Martin Luther King died in 1968. 1968, which means if you're 65 and older, you were alive before the assassination of Martin Luther King. 65%, so the people 65 and older, that's the demographic that is the most against reparations. What? But we can see that as you start moving down the list and you get younger and younger, the tide starts to shift. 65 and older is 81 to 18. 50 to 64 is 74 to 24. 30 to 49, 63 to 34. So you see those no votes are starting to shift to yeses as you get younger and younger. The 18 to 29 demographic, that's 52 to 45. That's almost a 50-50. That's almost a 50-50 split. Can we get a hell yeah? Can we get a round of applause for the youth? Can we get a round of applause for the youth? Listen, the youth are seeing this reparations movement. The youth, they listening to Kendrick. They bumping, they not like us. They not like us. The youth is hearing this message. The youth is getting this ism. The youth is understanding, hold on. They have a point. They do have a point. Nothing has ever been done to rectify the harms that this country has done to their specific lineage. Nothing has ever been done to rectify their harms. So that group 18 to 29, they're starting to move into the yes category. They're almost at a 50-50 split. And what I want to emphasize to you is Now, I've got family members who are in the 65 and older group. So it does not bring me any joy to say this, but within the next 20 years or so, this group that's voting 81% no, that group is not going to be here. The group of 50 to 64, they're on their heels. You're only promised 70 years. You're only promised 70. God only promised you 70 years. Right? He said at the most 120. God only promised you 70, and that's if you honor your mother and your father. So these groups that's voting no at a rate of 74 to 81%, these groups are going to be gone in the not too distant future. Whereas these groups in the 18 to 29 category, the group in the 30 to 49 category, those groups are going to start having kids in the next 20 years. Those groups that are starting to vote yes. You see the yes vote is starting to get bigger. When these groups start to have kids, not only are they going to be voting yes, but their kids are going to be voting yes, which does give me hope. It gives me some solace that the future is looking brighter than the past. As these older demographics start to die off, the younger generation is going to pick up the mantle. And the younger generation, folks like me, I'm in this 39 to 49 demographic. The younger generation is going to keep preaching the need for reparations, the need for delineation. And that message is going to spread. The younger generation is the future. And the younger generation is rocking. The younger generation is rocking with reparations. Much more so than the older generation. Much more so than the generation. So we are going to break down the demographics, the issues with demographics on this topic. But I got to give a quick salute. Can I get a round of applause for the younger generation? So that's a good thing. That's a good thing. That was not a round of applause. Round of applause here. Shout out to youth. Shout out to the youth. All right. So with that being said, I want to get some more into this article. Black Americans most likely say legacy of slavery affects black people in the U.S. at least a fair amount. 3/4 of Americans who support reparations say federal government should be responsible for repayment. Majority of reparations supporters think financial assistance for education, businesses, and homes would be helpful forms of reparations. Most Americans who support reparations for slavery say this is unlikely in their lifetime. Right? They say it's unlikely in their lifetime. But we're looking at the youth. I wonder if how long they're planning on living. Because I think that they at the time of saying it's unlikely in their lifetime, I think they're basing that, just like they said seeing a black president is unlikely in their lifetime. You'd be surprised. You would be surprised. Now this article is what I want to follow up on that with. This article is coming from the Manhattan Institute. The question says, who pays for reparations? The immigration challenge and the reparation debate. All right, now this is a bit of a long article here. I'm going to skip down to the conclusion in a bit. I'm going to skip down to the conclusion. I read it on my own. I encourage you all to go check out the Manhattan Institute article on who pays for reparations, the immigration challenge, and the reparations debate. It's an interesting article, but this is going to point out the importance of the delineation movement, not only the delineation movement, but the views that many immigrants have on reparations. Let's start here. Who pays? Some considerations. At first blush, the problem of who pays for reparations seems a straightforward one. As previously discussed, perhaps 33 million black Americans would receive reparations paid for in some way or another by the other 300 million Americans. But are all those people plausibly beneficiaries of slavery? Yes. The answer to that question is yes. If they are in this country has benefited from slavery by hoarding the wealth accumulated from that free labor. So these people, these immigrants who chose to come to America, they chose to come to this country because this country was built and they saw that this country was rich. And the reason the country is rich is because of our free labor. So yes, are they beneficiaries of slavery? If they're in this country, you're damn skippy. They are beneficiaries of slavery. Or alternatively, should they all be equally on the hook? If they're paying taxes, then they're on the hook. Most obviously, it is hard to argue that most Asian and Hispanic Americans benefited, at least to the same degree as the average white person. Fine, they didn't benefit to the same degree as the average white person, but they benefited enough to want to come to this country. And if they saw that they wanted to partake in the benefits of the country, which was built on the backs of free labor, then they're equally responsible for the debt that is owed. Asian American immigrants to the U.S. did not meaningfully begin until after the Civil War. As of the 1860 census, there were just 30,000 Asians in the country, mostly Chinese origin residents of California. Similarly, there were just 186,000 Hispanics in the U.S. in 1860. These were overwhelmingly Mexican nationals who, as of 2021, made up less than 60% of the 62 million strong Hispanic population. One could pare down the paying population to all non-Hispanic whites, or even all non-Hispanic whites of the old Confederacy. But here too, immigration poses a problem. So you can see the Manhattan Institute, and we're going to get into their conclusion, but they're hiding behind immigration. They're saying, well, these immigrants, they're making up a bigger part of the country and they didn't own slaves, so we're going to make the immigrants pay for reparations. Yes, the immigrants owe reparations too. If they become citizens of this country, they came here because they saw opportunity. They came to America because they saw the wealth. They came here because they wanted to partake in the benefits of the country. If you take part of the benefits the country has to offer, you also owe the debts of the country. It's not a one-sided thing. You can't come to the country looking to benefit, but not want to be responsible for the debts and the obligations of the country. You can't come to the country and say, oh yeah, I want to open a business here. I want to get the money out of the country. I want to send US dollars back to my home nation. But then when war strikes, you don't want to partake in the war? No, you got to partake in the war. You got to defend the country. You got to pay the debts of the country if you want to take part in the benefits of the country. You got to take the good with the bad. The good is, hey, you get to come to a built country, which is beautifully made, which has all of these social programs, which Black Americans, foundational Black Americans fought to make possible, right? Things like WIC, Women, Infant, and Child. That was us. Things like the ambulance. Do you know that the first ambulance was created and run by Black Americans? Look it up. If you enjoy the ambulance, that was us. You enjoy social welfare services, that was us. The safety net, that was us. Public education, that was us. Do you understand that after slavery was ended, Black Americans quickly during the Reconstruction era went from zero literacy, meaning it was illegal for Black Americans to read and write, and we were able to turn that around to the 80%, to the tune of 80% literacy rate over this course of one decade, less than 10 years. We were able to go from 0% literacy to 80% literacy during the Reconstruction era. Look it up. So if you enjoy public schooling, that was us. You can't come to the country looking to enjoy the benefit, enjoy the good things the country has to offer without equally being responsible for the debts that the country owes. You see that? You see that? You got that? Good. On the eve of the Civil War, there were approximately 27 million non-Black people in the U.S., the overwhelming majority of whom were white. This population was largely the product of natural increase. As Figure 2 shows, there were relatively little immigration to the U.S. in the antebellum period. The 1860 vintage non-Black population also resembled the founding non-Black population in ethnic origin. The latter group was mostly British, 86%, from the UK nations, with the remainder being German, Dutch, French, and a small fraction of Swedish. Between 1820 and 1859, 91% of new arrivals were from Ireland, Germany, the UK, France, or Canada. The antebellum levels of infrequent ethnically homogeneous immigration did not persist. Let me read that again because I was a little distracted. The antebellum levels of infrequent ethnically homogeneous immigration did not persist. What that means is the immigration only coming from white countries, that didn't continue. They ended the ethnically homogeneous, meaning the all white, all European immigration. They ended that. Following the end of the Civil War, the U.S. entered its first age of migration, powered by advances in technology and the promise of prosperity. Let me highlight that again. Why did following the Civil War, meaning when slavery finally ended and Black people gained their freedom, and oh, wait, Black people can come to America and not be slaves? Now, after the Civil War, the U.S. entered its first great age of migration, powered by advances in technology and the promise of prosperity. So all these other groups, when we were in slavery, they were like, nah, I don't want to come. I don't want to go there. You see how they treating Black folks over there? Nah, I'm good. I'm not trying to go to America. They treating the Black folks terribly. They let the Black folks fight. The Black folks get their freedom. They fought against the Confederacy. The Black folks got their freedom. The Black folks started inventing stuff. Not started, but the Black folks continued inventing things and getting their patents stolen by people like the cotton gin. That's a whole nother story about all of our inventions getting stolen. But we continue to invent, create technology like the modern traffic light, the modern light bulb. That's a whole nother story. Continue to get advanced technology and continue to increase the funds of the country. All these other groups were like, oh, wait, the Black people are free now and they get to live good? Hey, I want a part of that. Between 1866 and 1924, the year of the Johnson-Reed Act effectively ended immigration for a generation. More than 30 million people arrived in the U.S. This represented a substantial addition compared with the 38 million people already here of 1870. As before 1860, the vast majority of these new immigrants, 90% from 1860 to 1919, were European. A further 50% were Canadian, but they came from many more countries, including Italy, Austria, Germany, Russia, the UK, Ireland, and the joint kingdoms of Norway and Sweden. A large number of Jewish people also arrived from across Eastern Europe. In other words, by the time of the mid-20th century immigration pause, the white population of the U.S. had a substantial component whose arrival to the country could be dated to the years following the Civil War. So what they're arguing is a lot of these people came after the Civil War. They didn't have ties to slavery, so they shouldn't be on the hook for reparations. That's the crux of their argument. Today's U.S. white population then is made up to a substantial extent of people whose earliest American ancestors arrived after the end of slavery, and who therefore are as little obliged to pay reparations as their Hispanic and Asian peers in similar situations. So this is the argument that they're hiding behind. They're saying, well, look, my ancestors came after the Civil War. We came from Russia. We came from Austria. We came from Canada. You know, we came here after the Civil War. So why should we pay reparations? Just like the Hispanics and Asians, we came after the Civil War and we didn't own any slaves. Why should we pay reparations? That's an easy question to answer. The answer is because you chose to come partake of this country. You knew, or you should have known what this country has done to the Black Americans. You knew that slavery was taking place here. You knew that the wealth of the country was built. You knew that the wilderness was paved. The country was built based on the backs of our free labor, and you chose to come partake in it. You chose to come here because you saw the benefits that were being offered based on the wealth that we accumulated. So if you chose, whether you're Asian, whether you're Hispanic, whether you're a white person from Canada or Eastern Europe or any other place, if you chose to come partake in the wealth, you saw a piece of the pie and you wanted it, you came to America willingly because you wanted to reap the benefits of the wealth that we accumulated for free, fine. You can get a piece of the benefits, but you are also on the hook for the debt. So do these people from Canada and Eastern Europe, Russia, Hispanic nations and Asian nations who came here after the Civil War, after slavery had ended, do they owe reparations? The answer to that question is yes. The answer to that question is yes. Because they chose to come here. They chose to partake. And you can't take the good without the bad. If the country owes money and you choose to come move to the country because you see the country has so much money, well, you might take part in the assets, but you also got to take part in the liabilities. It can't be one-sided. You just get the money from us and you don't owe. No, it doesn't work that way, pimp. No, sir. No, sir, it does not work that way. Nah, man, you chose to be here. You chose to partake in it. You chose to partake in it. You knew where the money came from. It's like, what it's like is this. It's almost like, let's say me and my guys rob a bank, right? And we go back to the trap house, right? We go back to the trap house. You show up to the trap house after the bank has been robbed, and you see all this money on the table, and you're like, "Oh man, y'all got so much money. Hey, let me borrow like 50,000. Let me borrow like 10,000. Let me hold some racks." I'm like, "Oh man, you need some of this money? Yeah, you can go ahead. You can take some of that money, man. Go get yourself something nice. Go get a car. Go do something nice with yourself." So you take that stolen money. You take that money, those ill-gotten gains, the money that we just took from the bank, and you go buy yourself a new car. You go buy yourself some new clothes. You go buy yourself a new watch. You go buy yourself, and you pimping. You're like, "Hey, big pimping, spending cheese." You're partying. You're here for the party. You have no problem taking the money. You know, hey, where'd you get that money? Oh man, we just hit up the Truist Bank, man. We just hit up the Bank of America, the BOA. We just hit up the SunTrust, man. We just came up. Yo, go take something. And you willingly take that money. You choose to participate. You choose to take the money. But then when the cops come, you're going to say, oh, well, yeah, I took the money, but I didn't rob the bank. Nah, pimp. Nah, pimp. It don't work that way. It does not work that way. You chose to participate. You chose to reap the benefits. You chose to take the money, those ill-gotten gains. You chose to reap the benefits of us robbing the bank. Well, you got to do the time. You got to sit down with us. We got to sit down in prison because we robbed the bank, and you got to sit down in prison because you took the money. You participated. You enjoyed the ill-gotten gains. That's how I feel about these immigrant groups, whether you be Asian, whether you be Hispanic, whether you be white from another country, but your ancestors came to America after the Civil War, after the slaves were freed. You can't hide and say, oh, well, my family didn't own any slaves. Well, I came here after the Civil War. Nah, pimp. It don't work that way. You saw the benefits. You saw the money, the ill-gotten gains sitting on the table. You came with your hand out. You wanted that money. Yeah, you might not have robbed the bank with us, but you enjoyed the money. You enjoyed the fruits of those ill-gotten gains. You enjoyed the fruits of that spoiled tree. You enjoyed the fruits of that spoiled tree, that rotten tree. So since you had no problem partaking in the benefits, partaking in the assets, you equally got to participate in the paying back, the restitution, the reparations. If you are a resident or you are a citizen, I won't say resident, but if you are a citizen of the United States, meaning you pay taxes, those tax dollars can, should, and will be utilized to pay foundational Black Americans reparations. Mark my words. It's only a matter of time. Whether you believe it or not, whether you like it or not, the day will come. The day will come when foundational Black Americans receive the justice that we deserve. Can I get a round of applause for the foundational Black Americans? Can I get a round of applause for justice and the inevitable success the justice that we will one day reap? Because people out here on the grassroots, not just me, but hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people just like me, all getting on code mentally. We're all having this conversation in our YouTube podcasts, within our families, within our group chats, within our Instagram lives, our feeds. You'll see it all over. You'll see it in real life and online. You will see this conversation. You will see people pushing politicians, asking, demanding for justice for foundational Black Americans. And when this is a square we're not going to get off of. I showed y'all the age demographics from the Pew Research, showing that the youth are much more on code. The youth, 18 to 29, much more so than the elderly. The people who were here before Martin Luther King, they were 81% no, 18% yes. When we look at the youth, 18 to 29, you see that every generation moving down, the numbers get higher and higher to the yes vote. It was 18 to 1, 81 to 18, then it's 74 to 24, then it's 63 to 34, then it's 52 to 45. And as the 65 and older generation, as they die out, and the 74 generation gets older, then there's going to be a new generation that's pushing yes. And that demographic change, those age changes are just going to keep pushing towards the yes, the youth. We got the ears of the youth. We got the ears of the future because the youth is the future. And the youth is saying yes to reparations. The youth is saying yes to reparations. So it's only a matter of time. We just got to be patient. I believe it's going to happen in my lifetime, truth be told. But if not in my lifetime, hey, my son is here. Definitely in my son's lifetime. It's coming. Oh, you just got to have some faith. Oh, ye of little faith. It's coming. It's on the way. Just be patient. Just be patient. All right, guys, we're almost out of time here. It's getting late. I've been rocking for a while. I appreciate everyone who's been rocking with me. I got one more bonus clip. Should I play this bonus clip or should I save it for the next live? Y'all give me a thumbs up if you think I should play this bonus clip. Because y'all know once I start ranting, y'all know it's hard for me to cut it off. Should I? Give me a thumbs up if you think I should get into this. Should I get one more? We got some time. I see a thumbs up getting onto the okay. All right, let's see. I see some thumbs up. Let's see some thumbs up. All right, let's get it. I'm gonna play one more clip here. I'm gonna play one more clip before I call it a night. You know, I got work to do tomorrow. I got stuff to do. I'm a busy man, but we're gonna play one more clip. I found this clip interesting. I was gonna save it for another time, but let's get into it. This is gonna be the last clip we get into. I'm gonna play this clip, then I'm gonna come back with some closing thoughts. Y'all be sure to hit the thumbs up button if it's your first time watching. Subscribe. All right, check this out.
Okay, I have a question and I am welcoming every opinion on this. I just got a DM and somebody told me, stop speaking on black issues, you are not black. They are right. I'm not black. I'm African. But does that disqualify me from speaking on black issues that also affect me? And now I'll give you a little background on me. I'm from Africa.
See, hold on. I got to stop her there. I'm going to let her finish. But she said, they are right. I'm not black. I'm African. Wait, what? You're not black. You're African. Huh? See, this is why it's important that we start using specific terms. Terms like foundational black American. Terms like melanated. Because that term black Americans, we call everyone black. Oh, you're black. We're black. Oh, you're not black. What is black? This woman just said, oh, I'm not black. I'm African. She's darker than me. Talking about she's not black. She's African. What does that mean? This is why it's important that we use terms like foundational black American, which is a specific lineage, a specific group. This is why it's important that we say terms like melanated. Because if you said, oh, you're melanated, there's no way she would say, I'm not melanated, I'm African. Huh? No, you say, I'm not black, I'm African. In her mind, that makes sense. But she wouldn't deny being melanated. That's why this term black, it's outdated. It's outdated. It's not specific enough. We've got black Africans. We've got dark-skinned, melanated Africans talking about, I'm not black, I'm African. Okay, and then these are the same folks that's going to be on my YouTube comments talking about we need unity. Talking about forget reparations, we need unity. They getting on their lives talking about I'm not black, I'm African, but then going to get on my live talking about we need unity, forget reparations. It's crazy. Let her finish.
I came to the U.S. in 2012. Been here ever since, have never gone back to visit, nothing like that. I did all my schooling here, learned English, learned a lot of things, and I am now a citizen of the U.S. I still speak my first language because of my family. I am very accustomed to American life. I eat the food, I listen to the music. Almost everything about me is American. I grew up here and have spent more time here than I have in Africa. I am treated as black in this country. I'm seen as black. Issues that affect or are strong in the black community also pertain to me. I'm talking about colorism, texturism, featureism, all of it. Are those issues that I'm not allowed to talk about because I'm not Black American? It is a very hard thing to talk about and understand because it's confusing. I see myself as African because that's just where I'm from. I don't know, now I just feel like I'm just saying whatever, but actually, I do want to talk about this because I feel like that's the reality of a lot of Africans that grow up here, especially the ones who aren't that close to their culture anymore. If you relate to me or have anything or opinions or whatever, feel free to comment.
Okay, so I want to address what this
Okay,
this confused young lady is saying. I want to comment on this. So a few things. First of all, I already said we got to stop using terms like black because people seem to be too confused. It's not specific enough. We've got to use more specific terms like foundational black American. Fine, got that out the way. Now, to answer her question, is she allowed to talk? She said a lot of things there, so I want to address a few of her points. First of all, she said a lot of the issues that affect foundational black Americans also affect her. She said things like colorism, things like hair, things like texturism. She listed a few things there. I want to be the first to say foundational black Americans were not so fixated on these things until these other groups got into the country. Colorism, we in America have a one-drop rule. One-drop rule in America, which means if you have one drop of black blood, you are black. We don't see you as any different because you're light-skinned or because you're dark-skinned. Listen, we're all black. See, she says she's not black, she's African. Yeah, we can tell. Because in America, we don't care if you're light-skinned, we don't care if you're dark-skinned, we don't care if your hair is nappy or straight. If you got one drop of black blood in you, you're black and you're just like the rest of us naggers. You just like the rest of us naggers. We don't care if you're light-skinned or what state you're from. See, we look at each other like we're all black, but they come over here and they think there's something different. They're not black, they're African. See? And a lot of those things that they face in their home countries, like colorism is a big thing in Africa, especially like in South Africa, because they don't have the one drop rule there. In South Africa, they've got the coloreds, they've got the black, and those are separate groups. Colors and black is not the same thing in Africa. But see, in America, we don't have coloreds and black. Nah, we just have black. See, we were all black, and then they tried to bring in black and brown, and they tried to make all these vague, confusing terms to really intentionally confuse us. Trying to take the issues that they were facing in their homelands and bring it to us and project their confusion onto us. So no, those issues as far as colorism and hair texturism and all of that, those aren't things that we were even discussing or even had concerns with here in America. Those are issues that these foreign groups came to America with and projected onto us. That's one. But to answer her fundamental question of should she be allowed to talk on issues that she's concerned about, I don't believe in censorship. I don't believe in censorship. I don't care if you're from America or you're from another country. I don't care if you're an immigrant here legally or illegally. You can come here illegally. I don't care if you're an illegal immigrant. You have the right to talk. I'm not going to stop or block anyone from voicing their opinion. I encourage discussion. If I'm saying something that you disagree with, I'd like to hear it. I encourage you to leave it in the comments section, whether I agree with you or not. I want people to have the freedom and the space to communicate and express themselves. And hey, maybe I can correct some of the thoughts, some flaws in my thinking. Or maybe I can help you correct some flaws in your way of thinking. But by having the discussion, by having the right to express ourselves, that's how we achieve change. That's how we achieve solutions. But when you say, and I've seen a lot of people, this is more of a thing on the internet. Oh, well, you can't talk about this topic. You're not black. Oh, you can't talk about this topic. You're not foundational black American. You can't talk about this topic. You're not American. You're not even in this country. Listen, that is a cop-out. That's a lazy man's argument. If you hear someone say you can't talk on this topic because you're white or because you're an immigrant or because you're this or because you're that, only lazy people are going to say something like that to you. Because it's easier to censor you. It's easier to tell you you can't speak instead of debating the things that you say. So I do not respect anyone who tells people they can't speak or they can't talk on a certain topic. I remember when Donald Trump He went to the NABJ. He went to the National Associations of Black Journalists, and he was telling them, I didn't know Kamala Harris was black. And a lot of the pushback came from black people, even though they agreed with what Donald Trump was saying. They were saying, well, he's still a white man and he shouldn't be getting involved in our discussions. To a certain degree, I agree. To a certain degree, it might not be any of his business. But at the same time, I think it took courage for him to make those statements in front of a black audience. And not only that, he's allowed to say whatever he wants. We have freedom of speech here. In America, I encourage freedom of speech. That's a privilege. That's a right that we have. And not everybody on this planet has freedom of speech. There's a lot of countries where you can go where people can get shot and killed for their thoughts and their speech and the things that they say. I'm proud to be an American where we can say what we want to say. So I don't like people trying to censor others because they're not black or they're not American or they're not this or they're not that. That's lazy. That's lazy. But hey, that's going to be it for today's video. Hey, this was a long one tonight. Salute everyone who stayed and rocked with me throughout tonight's video. I appreciate y'all rocking with me. Can I get a round of applause? This is an hour long live. Shout out to everyone who made it to the end of this video. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button on your way out. And if it's your first time watching, smash the subscribe button for content just like this. Listen, we got the new mic. We're upgrading the channel. We're getting new equipment here. We're going to better the studio. We're going to get new cameras next. We're going to get a new camera, try to make things a little bit clearer and crispier for you. So we're working on it, guys. Be sure to support us. Support the channel. Hit the thumbs up button. And hit the thumbs up button because it's free, man. It's free. Hit the thumbs up button. Support the channel. Share it with your folks. I might say something that they find interesting. I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace.